Kaoru was a lonely, miserable orphan who was constantly abused by the higher-ups because of his skill. However, everything changed when he reseeded the world and abused his abusers in revenge. In the new world, while he harvests fruits in the forest one particular day, he suddenly hears a voice in his head that tells him to obtain the sight of the spirits. He wonders what this is but starts to wander further into the forest like a zombie, and soon reaches a lake where a spirit suddenly emerges from the water. She introduces herself as a star spirit and asks him what he desires, to which he replies that he wants the sight of the spirits that see all things. She immediately comes closer to him and kisses his right eye. Suddenly, he experiences a flashback to his previous life when he was a healer who had the power to revive and heal the injured. However, he was used as a slave by the nobles in battles and constantly drugged till he became useless to himself. During their final battle against the Demon King, when his masters got damaged and were expecting his useless ass to heal them, he rebelled and chose to fight the Demon King by himself. He could rebel because he had gained the skill of drug resistance the year before the battle, so he wasn't influenced by the heavy drugs they used on him again. Flair, the master he hated the most, told him this was useless because he didn't know how to fight, but he shocked her when he suddenly charged at the demons and began to isekai them. His healing power actually came with the ability to relive the experiences of everyone he healed, and through this, he could imitate their techniques and make them into his own. He soon came face to face with the Demon King, who demanded to know who he was, and he identified himself as a hero of recovery. He charged at her, and despite all her attacks, he penetrated them, constantly healing himself as he got hit until he finally reached her and removed the core of her heart, the Philosopher's Stone. Flair congratulated him for doing a good job and asked him to take the stone from him, but he refused. He told her he wanted to heal this corrupt world and go back to the time before he met her. He finally told her that he would be sure to take everything from her if they met once again when in the new world he was about to create, and then he immediately activated the stone and restarted the world. Back to the present, he thanks the Star Spirit, which marks the beginning of his villain arc. Following this, his birthday came and he was chosen as a hero, just like in his previous life, while still retaining the status of a healer. So from then onward, he starts to feed on every crack he can find like a moron so he can gain the needed resistance against what Flair is predicted to do to him in the future. One day, Flair appears in his village, and because he is a hero, he is taken back to the imperial capital to serve a greater purpose. On getting to the beautiful city, the idiot tries to raise her up with the cheesy pickup line he learned on Discord and says she is so beautiful that she is almost ugly. He soon meets the king, and upon checking his stats with his green eye, he realizes he is like a monster, so he must be wary of him if he needs to make any move. They discover he is in the class of healers, which is exactly what the country has been looking for, so the king bestows on him the title Hero of Recovery. The king then says that since he has the power of a hero, he should be able to heal the Sword Saint, who lost her right arm in a fight against a high-ranking class of demons. Later that night, while he lies on his bed in his chamber, thinking about the whole event, a hot chick comes into the room and suddenly removes her plot armor before sitting on him. She quickly begins to develop plot with him until he finishes. The subsequent nights after this will be with different baddies clapping him in different positions, but while they do this, he also steals their experiences with his imitation healing skill. A few days later, the Sword Saint named Koreha arrives at the castle, and as soon as he meets her, he casts his healing spell on her, regenerating her arm and instantly shocking her. However, he becomes very weak and collapses, and before she can say thank you, Flair and one stupid old man appears and tells her to go show herself to the king. Flair becomes disgusted by how weak he is and cancels him immediately, but the old man tells her that Kaoru is one of a kind, so they must keep him by all means. Flair says he is pretty worthless to them in battle if this is how he faints every time he heals. She then tells the old man to use whatever he can on him, even if it destroys him, so he can be able to fulfill his role. Meanwhile, Kaoru, still conscious, is grateful that this douchebag is the same as she was in his previous life, so he can gladly have his revenge without mercy. The next day in his room, Kaoru starts to throw tantrums like a baby refused his toys, saying he doesn't want to be a healer because of the horror he experiences whenever he does. Flair tries to persuade him with cheap talk, but bro ain't buying that crap and insists that he is never doing this again. She pretends to be sympathetic and tells him she wouldn't force him to do what he doesn't want, so she leaves with the old man, but bro knows his past too well to fall for her cheeky act of sympathy twice. A maid soon arrives with a cup of tea from Flair to sympathize with him, and even though he knows it is drugged, he takes it, causing him to faint immediately. Afterward, he is woken up in a cell with a punch to his disgusting face by one of the guards named Leonard, who begins to torture him for defying Flair's orders. The old man enters the cell to give him more portion of the drug, and from then onward, several freakies visit him every night to get cultured with him, while also drugging him. Even shameless men who want to level up their abilities forcefully put his meat to good use without caring about him. During this time, they continued to overuse him in the day to heal people even though he is exhausted and feeling terrible pains, and in the night, those baddies won't leave his need alone. However, Kaoru has prepared for all this beforehand and only awaits the day his tolerance level will reach a threshold where he will awaken. One night, after Flair finishes drugging him as usual, she breaks the bottle on his head and heads out of the cell. However, Kaoru suddenly regains his mind and awakens, completely overcoming the influence of the drug. Then, he immediately realizes that the time to carry out his revenge has come. Meanwhile, as she leaves, Flair perceives something strange, but she dismisses it and takes her leave. Over the next few days, Kaoru eavesdrops on the soldiers and gathers several pieces of information from them, waiting for the perfect time to strike. On a particular night, he discovers that the king is on a trip, and then he breaks his chains and escapes from prison. As soon as Flair hears, she becomes concerned and wonders how the heck he escaped. However, Leonard manages to catch him and brings him to her. He then tells Flair that Kaoru said something that should not be ignored. Hearing this, Flair invites him to her chambers, and as soon as they get there, Leonard immediately unalids her guards and then strips her into her birthday suit. She is surprised and wonders what has come over him, but he smirks and transforms into Kaoru, shocking her. He breaks one of her fingers and tells her if she can remain quiet while he breaks all 10, he will end his revenge, and if not, he will continue. She immediately agrees to this and bears all the pain. However, as soon as Kaoru finishes breaking them, he heals them and starts all over, causing her to scream in pain. Following that, he takes her to her bed and prepares to destroy her with his mighty weapon. She tries to run but realizes that he has incapacitated her, so she starts to wriggle on the floor, trying to escape. However, he catches up with her, grabs a metal rod, and puts it inside fire before asking her to choose between this rod and that rod. She starts to beg for that rod, and after making her beg for a while, he destroys her. Afterward, he erases her memory and changes her face. He takes her with him and escapes, leaving behind a corpse that he had turned into Flair. He also set it all up to make it look like Leonard was the culprit. And he changes his own face too into a charming guy since he used to look like a Halloween costume. While he sits in his new home the next day, he reasons that he has to become stronger and meet the Demon King to find out what she was trying to hide in his previous life. Flair soon wakes up in her new appearance with an empty head, and on seeing Kaoru, she wonders who he is and what her own name is. He calls her Freya and tells her they used to be lovers who loved developing too much plot. He brainwashed her with magic, and she immediately falls for him. Following that, they quickly engage in an intense workout session, after which she acts cuddly around him because of how good the session was. She asks him for his name, and he introduces himself as Kaoruga because he has been reborn. Following this, Kaoru and Freya make arrangements to leave the imperial capital for their safety. And as they leave, they see people gathered around a wanted poster of Leonard since he is believed to have been responsible for Flair's death. Kaoru smirks and continues walking, but as he leaves, he suddenly hears someone talking about Norn's return, making him scared. For context, Norn is Flair's younger sister, and in Kaoru's first life, she was the only one who recognized that he had regained his senses, which is why she is someone he would rather not be involved with this time around. The next day, Kaoru wakes up from a nightmare of his past life when he was used as a pleasure toy by Flair and her subordinates, Blade and Bullet, which makes him more determined to get revenge on them too. Several days after leaving the imperial capital, they arrive at another city and head to a bar to have some food. As they eat, Kaoru takes some water, but as he is about to drink, his super eye suddenly notices that it is poisoned, and he quickly stops Freya from drinking. He suspects that the water source in the town has been contaminated by monster carcasses, and this is starting to affect the citizens. Following this, he drinks the water, shocking Freya, but he tells her his healing power will make his body produce antibodies to fight against it, which would then become the antidote. Afterward, he drips a drop of his blood into the water, and it immediately neutralizes the poison within it. The next day, as they walk through the city, they come across a merchant and his aide, who Kaoru immediately recognizes that they are good using his green eye. He meets with them and tells the merchant he's got the cure for his infection. But the merchant thinks he is just one of those roadside drug vendors who are looking for who to scam. However, Kaoru asks the merchant to test the drug on his aide, whose life doesn't seem to be worth a dollar bill. As soon as the aide takes it, his infection is cured immediately, shocking the merchant, who also takes it instantly and gets healed. Kaoru, since he has finally gotten him to believe, tells him he has a box of the medicine and is willing to supply more if he buys it at 1 gold per vial. However, the merchant offers to buy the recipe instead, but Kaoru replies that it was passed down in his family, so he can't reveal it. They soon reach an agreement, and after Kaoru gets paid for the box of medicine, the idiot heads out with all that money and goes to a slave shop immediately to get his next workout partner. Upon meeting the slave merchant and telling him he wants to get one, the old man starts calling him sir and shows him around to see the different options he can pick from. However, Kaoru is not impressed, and the old merchant takes him to the innermost part of the prison where the combat slaves are. After checking for a while, the old man finally shows Kaoru a certain slave who is believed to be infected and beyond recovery. Kaoru realizes that she is powerful by checking her stats, but he soon realizes that she is seeking revenge on some people, and this has made her very fierce and violent. He moves closer and promises to help her get revenge if she comes along with him, immediately calming her down and causing her to fall unconscious. Kaoru tells the merchant he is taking her, but the merchant thinks that even a fool wouldn't like her and warns him that there will be no refund if she starts to glitch. He tells her he knows and says he would like to know how her face is when she finally gets her revenge. As Kaoru leaves with her, the merchant tells him he will come back if he wants more girls from the Ice Wolf clan, since more shipments will be coming soon. He takes her home and removes her slave collar, but Freya asks him if it is really smart to remove a slave's collar. However, he replies that Setsuna will still obey him even without it. He approaches her and casts his healing spell, which immediately causes him to have a glimpse of her memories. Setsuna belongs to the Ice Wolf clan, but her clan was attacked by the Imperial army disguised as mercenaries. While some were isekai'd, many others were captured to be sold into slavery. Meanwhile, Kaoru reasons that making Freya unalive her army will be a lot of fun. Following this, he takes a portion of the antidote and gives it to Setsuna to drink with his mouth, which makes Freya jealous. The next day, he goes to sell more antidotes to Goldman. When he returns together with Freya, he gives her another portion of the antidote with his mouth, which makes Freya uncomfortable again as she feels she will soon have to share Kaoru's sausage with another girl. However, as Kaoru kisses the unconscious girl, she suddenly wakes up, and on seeing him, she smacks him in the face for bringing such a horrible and disgusting thing to her face. But Freya quickly intervenes and tells her that Kaoru has actually been taking care of her in her unconscious state, making her realize that she has actually been cured, so she apologizes immediately for being a bitch. Afterward, Kaoru sends Freya on an errand so he can be alone with Setsuna, and just after she leaves, Setsuna immediately attempts to attack Kaoru, but he quickly overpowers her. He then tells her the reason he didn't put a collar on her neck is because he is infinitely stronger than her and doesn't need a collar to make her do as he says. Setsuna asks her what he is, and he tells her he is an alchemist. He tells her not to be worried about her clan because they are still safe as the Imperial army hasn't attacked yet. He makes her realize that she is weak and wouldn't be able to do much in trying to save her clan, and then tells her he can make her stronger. Setsuna immediately tells him she is willing to do anything to protect her clan, and Kaoru offers the condition that she has to tell him her true name before he can let her use his powers. The true name of a demi-human is the name carved into her soul, and Kaoru, knowing this, would give him complete control over her. Even though Setsuna feels reluctant about this, she is willing to do it if it will protect her, and knowing this, Kaoru immediately removes his plot armor. He tells her he will enlarge her vessel with his big stuffs so she can become stronger, and she consents to it. They quickly do things you would only watch on Incognito, and the next day they head to the Ice Wolf clan to lay siege to the Imperial army. The war quickly begins between the Ice Wolf clan and the Imperial army, and as they battle, Kaoru decides to intercept them so he can create an opportunity for Setsuna to strike. He identifies himself as the hero of sword and starts spilling red juice all over the place. On getting to the Ice Wolf clan, he tells them he came in response to the tears and desires of Setsuna, shocking them. But those dudes don't give a heck about the crap he is saying until they see Setsuna also destroying the Imperial army. As Setsuna fights, Kaoru sees her smiling, and he becomes glad that she is enjoying it. Meanwhile, he observes that Freya doesn't seem to have the same wickedness as she did when she was Flare, making him wonder if the corruption of the kingdom was what made her that way. He makes up his mind that he must also get his revenge on the entire kingdom and not just on Flare. Later that night, he discovers that the poisoned water source was caused by the Ice Wolf clan, and he asks Setsuna if he should make the poison stronger so she can get revenge on many more humans that isekate her friends or heal the poison. Setsuna replies that she doesn't want the innocent humans to suffer, and after hearing this, Kaoru heals the water immediately. Following this, Bro quickly develops plot with her and claps her till she reveals her true name because of how good he is at clapping. Meanwhile, at the imperial capital, the king realizes that Bernard was framed and is in Kaoru's past form, so he gives his weak, incompetent ass a chance to restore his reputation. Meanwhile, in the imperial capital, Korea overhears some losers talking about the incident at the Ice Wolf clan, and they mention that some guy identified himself as the hero of sword and even wielded the claret sword technique. The next day, as Kaoru and his side chicks walk through the city, a moron by the roadside suddenly calls him and offers to buy Setsuna for a gold coin, but he tells him to come back for business when he has 1,000 gold pieces. However, the broke dude gets angry and attempts to attack him, but Setsuna intervenes and locks him. Then Kaoru casts magic on him, making him discover that he was one of the soldiers in the Imperial Army who survived the attack on the Ice Wolf clan village. He takes his badge, and Setsuna sends him to the Great Beyond. Following this, Kaoru meets Goldman, and as they talk, Goldman calls out his men to threaten Kaoru into giving him the recipe for the medicine. He says that business partners want to manufacture on a larger scale than he is currently producing. However, Kaoru asks them how many would like an express flight to Nirvana, but Goldman thinks he is just bluffing, so Kaoru dares him to try him then. Moreover, he soon changes his mind and says he will sell the recipe for 500 gold pieces, to which the merchant agrees immediately. After giving him the recipe, Kaoru and his girls head out, but the girls feel he shouldn't have sold the recipe. However, Kaoru tells them that the medicine won't work anyway since it needs the antibodies produced inside his body to function. Also, he had already cured the poisoned water source, so the disease would soon stop spreading in no time, which would put Goldman and his business partners at a huge loss. The girls are impressed by his IQ, but as they continue walking, Korea suddenly attacks, but he swiftly responds with a blocking. However, she manages to slash him in the face. She accuses him of being the culprit who unalived the soldiers in the Imperial Palace, but Setsuna and Freya come to his defense. However, Korea thinks these idiots have been brainwashed and are only protecting him because he claps them real good. Meanwhile, Freya gets pissed and immediately launches a fiery attack, but Korea parries her attack and charges swiftly toward her to knock her out in one hit. This makes Kaoru annoyed, and he immediately reinforces his body with magic before launching at her. This is followed by an intense exchange of attack, and soon, Korea unleashes a secret move that allows her to penetrate Kaoru's defense, but as soon as her sword touches him, it breaks immediately. However, Korea unleashes a kung fu technique that sends Kaoru crashing into the wall, but Korea becomes surprised when he reappears uninjured. She wonders who the heck he is, and he tells her he is him. They charge at each other again, and during the intense fight, Kaoru breaks a potion of aphrodisiac on her body that suddenly weakens her. However, she quickly stabs her thigh to neutralize the effect, and they continue fighting. She soon gains an advantage and slashes him, but he immediately heals himself and then touches her head to show her some horrible memories of the Imperial Army abusing the Ice Wolf clan. She becomes shocked by this and falls to the ground immediately. Following this, they take Koraha back to their residence, and while she is still unconscious, Kaoru tells Freya that she would need to do some acting. He gets alone with Koreha and heals her instantly, restoring her consciousness. She immediately remembers what she saw about her kingdom, but refuses to believe it as she has always seen the kingdom as good. However, Kaoru transforms into his previous ugly form with his baby face, and when Korea sees him, she tells him he will not escape what he did to Flare. He tells her he didn't murder Flare, but she doesn't believe him, so Freya comes out in Flare's appearance and tells Freya that Kaoru has been the good guy who saved her and made her realize how evil their kingdom is. She adds they are now on a mission to save the world and then takes her leave. This convinces Koreha, and she apologizes to Kaoru for attacking him despite the fact that he had restored her lost arm. She assures him she will assist in whatever way, and then moves closer to him to kiss him because she is now feeling so saz. Kaoru, who is one never to miss leg day, so he seizes the opportunity and starts to work out his lower body, pounding her bunda till they become red. Meanwhile, Leonard, having received permission from the king, is on a desperate search for Kaoru. The next day, while Kaoru and the girls are gathered at a table eating, they suddenly hear someone calling out to Kaoru from outside. They look through the window and see that it's Leonard and his team who have captured the people from Kaoru's village. Realizing it's a trap to lure him out, Kaoru tells Koreha to investigate the situation with his village. Koreha agrees to do her best, and Kaoru gives her a kiss for luck. Meanwhile, Leonard questions one of his subordinates about any information on Kaoru. The soldier reports that nothing useful has been discovered yet. Leonard, frustrated and angry, berates them for their incompetence and mentions that the pain in his right eye suggests Kaoru is nearby. His irritation is compounded by his growing displeasure with his own reflection, as he is disguised as Kaoru. Leonard confidently declares that he will unalive Kaoru and starts laughing maniacally while Anna is bound behind him. At the same time, Koreha informs Kaoru that the soldiers attacked his village, accusing them of harboring heretical beliefs related to the recovery hero. Kaoru smirks, noting that such tactics are typical of Leonard's methods. When Setsuna asks if he's finding any satisfaction in this, he replies that he's actually filled with sadness and anger. Expressing gratitude to Koreha, Kaoru mentions he's going for a walk. He then uses a disguise to assume the appearance of a soldier they had previously isekai'd en route to see Goldman. While hiding in the shadows of the city, Kaoru observes soldiers escorting slaves. Spotting one particular soldier he recognizes as Mollet, he seizes the opportunity and pulls him aside, so Kaoru reveals himself as Murda. Recognizing the name, Mollet engages in conversation. Murda explains that during an earlier encounter with a man using techniques of the Sword Saint, he fled the battle and, fearing execution, went into hiding. He asks Mollet if he can deliver a letter to Leonard, requesting his pardon and inviting him to rejoin the army. He also inquires about the fate of the villagers, and Mollet reveals that they have all been captured. Mollet then talks about how he enjoyed Leonard's cruel treatment of a particular lady to whom Leonard did some naughty acts, the type you would only watch when you are alone. Kaoru realizes that the woman is Anna, which deeply hurts him. Leonard visits Murda in the evening and asks about Kaoru's whereabouts. Murda responds by asking Leonard to promise to pardon him and allow him back into the army. Leonard agrees to drop all charges if Murda reveals Kaoru's location. Murda then reveals himself as Kaoru, having been in disguise. Leonard and his soldiers attempt to draw their weapons, but are weakened by the neurotoxin incense Kaoru is burning. Kaoru uses his healing abilities to delve into Leonard's mind and witnesses the atrocities committed against Anna. Enraged, he exacts revenge by turning him from bro to hoe and then feeding him to some thirsty men who would destroy her with their weapons of mass destruction so he can experience the same thing he did to Anna. Leonard begs for forgiveness, but Kaoru ignores him and sets them on fire. Desperate to find Anna, Kaoru rushes to her location, only to find her on the brink of death. Despite his attempts to heal her, he is unable to save her. The following day, Koreha informs Kaoru that the villagers are set to be executed at the Colosseum. She explains the dangers of the place, mentioning how it's heavily secured with barriers that prevent magic users from intervening. Despite his fear, Kaoru insists on going because he knows that saving the villagers is crucial to his goal of fixing the country. Koreha offers her assistance and mentions that she's heard of Norn's return from abroad, which surprises both Kaoru and Freya. Kaoru is concerned about Norn but reassures himself that she hasn't harmed him in this timeline, even though in his past life, she had known he had regained his senses and manipulated him to spy on her sister, among other things. On the day of the execution, Kaoru steps forward from the crowd and leaps into the arena as the spectators shout for his elimination. The executor warns him to stay back, offering a deal. If Kaoru surrenders, the villagers will be spared, and he will be given a dignified burial. However, Kaoru laughs at the suggestion and questions their confidence in being able to isekai him. As some soldiers advance to attack him, he reminds them that he's got plot armor, so he can't die. Undeterred, he continues to approach the executor and the soldiers. The executor, in a last-ditch effort, threatens to kill the villagers, but Kaoru remains super chilled and declares that he will save at least some of them, if not all, making the executor realize this dude is high on cheap crack. The executor orders the soldiers to begin executing the villagers, prompting Kaoru to vow revenge. stating that their actions have given him all the justification he needs to delete them all without hesitation. The executor then commands the activation of a barrier meant to suppress Kiaru's powers. However, they soon realize that the barrier is only affecting them and those wearing the jewels that are supposed to protect them from its effects. Suddenly, Freya appears, projected over the entire arena, disguised as Flare. The crowd, seeing Flare, listens as she reveals the dark side of the kingdom. She claims that Kiaru rescued her and took her away from the kingdom. She urges the people to fight for justice and for the demi-humans oppressed by the kingdom. Initially, the crowd is skeptical, but when she begins to sing Tyla's water song and appeals to their courage, they begin to believe it is truly Flare. Inspired by her words, they turn against the kingdom's soldiers, launching an attack on the kingdom's forces. Afterward, Kiaru hands over a surviving child from the captured villagers to Goldman, explaining that he could only save this one because the others were poisoned beyond help. Goldman comments on Kiaru's supposed softness, noting that even after betraying him, Kiaru still trusts him with the child and is even paying him a huge amount. However, Kiaru tells him to drop the useless hype, saying he is hard as a rock.
She knows.
He is doing this because he has a goal, and Goldman is just a pawn whom he can sacrifice any time. He further tells Goldman that the child will wake up with resentment toward him, but he instructs Goldman not to correct the child, as he wants the boy to grow up believing that the villagers died because of him, fueling his anger and desire for revenge, which will give him the reason to keep living just like himself. Following this, Kiaru bids farewell to Kureha as he prepares to leave the city with Setsuna and Freya. He asks her to continue gathering information, and she informs him that Norn is planning an attack on a city called Brenica. Kiaru muses that Brenica might be the perfect place to confront Norn, as this was not part of her plans in his previous life, indicating that the future might have changed. Meanwhile, at the kingdom, Norn is furious with her subordinates for allowing Kiaru to escape. She vows to capture him this time and insists on proceeding with her plan to attack Brenica despite her brainwashed subordinate questioning whether she should. Kiaru, Setsuna, and Freya arrive in Brenica, and as they explore the area, they decide to stop by a local restaurant, where they notice an unusual mix of humans and demons dining together peacefully. After being seated by a waiter, they find themselves sharing a table with both a human and a demon. Curious, Kiaru asks how such harmony between the two races came to be. The human and demon explain that things were very different 2 decades ago. Back then, tension and conflict were the norms. However, when the kingdom abandoned them, their king reached out to the demon king with a proposal for peace. The demon king accepted, leading to a treaty that allowed both races to coexist and prosper in Brenica. Their conversation is interrupted when the waiter returns, asking if another customer can join their table. Kiaru and his companions agree, but Kiaru is shocked to see that the new arrival is none other than the demon king from his previous life. However, she now has black hair instead of the silver hair he remembers. As the conversation progresses, the demon mentions that he's never actually seen the demon king despite being a demon himself. The human speculates that the demon king might be some gigachad with massive fangs and countless horns. However, Kiaru corrects them, stating that the demon king is far from what they imagine, and says she's actually quite adorable. He then points to the girl beside him, revealing that she is the demon king. The others laugh at his stupidity, saying it's called demon king for a reason and not a demon queen. Kiaru then wonders aloud if it would be a problem if the demon king were from the Black Wing tribe. The demon responds that it would definitely cause chaos in the restaurant since the demon king has placed a bounty on members of that tribe, whether dead or alive. As their discussion continues, a group of demons suddenly attack Kiaru and his companions, aiming for the demon king candidate at the table, blocking the incoming fire, surprising Kiaru at how strong the demon girl is. Amid the chaos, the demon king candidate is struck by a poisoned arrow in her thigh. As she begins to lose consciousness, Kiaru urges her to hire him so he can assist her. Despite her hesitation, she eventually agrees to ask for his help. One of the ugly monsters attack, but Kiaru spills his blood through all his holes. He then carries the demon girl and escapes with her. Once they reach their home, Kiaru asks Freya and Setsuna to give them some privacy. Along with the demon girl, he reveals to her that he knows she's destined to become the future demon king and offers his protection from the current one. Surprised, she questions how much he knows about her, and Kiaru surprises her even more by addressing her by her true name, Eve. When she asks about his price, Kiaru tells her that in exchange for his help, he wants the heart of the current demon king. Eve hesitates and tells him she'll consider his proposal. The next morning, Eve wakes up to the best music in anime history, and she is shocked when she sees that they are doing kept dances. Later on, during breakfast, Kiaru convinces Eve to join them on their journey, assuring her that they will protect her from any threats. He also promises that they will eliminate the current demon, enabling her to save the rest of the Blackwing tribe. Eve agrees to travel with them, offering to compensate them with the Demon King's heart, which is also known as the Philosopher's Stone. Afterward, while Kiaru speaks privately with Eve, he reveals that the Blackwing tribe is known for being powerful demons capable of controlling monsters. He inquires if she has a monster under her command. Eve confirms but mentions that it's challenging to maintain control because it requires passing difficult trials to ensure obedience. Kiaru offers to assist her, stating that they need more combat power. When he asks what kind of monster it is, she reveals that it's a god known as the diving bird of fatal disease, Cadrius, shocking him. He insists they should see it right away, but Eve hesitates, warning that they might contract diseases. However, Kiaru reassures her, boasting that as the hero of recovery, he can heal them no matter what. Afterward, he instructs Setsuna and Freya to look after Eve while he goes out to gather information. He pulls up in a new face to the restaurant where he was previously attacked by the Mad Cow crew. Soon, a member of the Mad Cow crew arrives, riding a ferocious bull since he has no Lamborghini, and he tries to attack Kiaru. However, Kiaru evades the assault. The demon boasts that no matter how much Kiaru changes his appearance, he can still recognize him by scent. In response, Kiaru strikes the bull, causing the demon to flee, but Kiaru is determined to take revenge on them. Later that night, after another session of the PG-18 scene with Setsuna and Freya, while Eve goons at their music from outside, Kiaru and Setsuna head out to confront the Mad Cow crew. They trap the crew in a pit and demand to know who else is aware of Eve's identity. The crew insists they're the only ones who know, and while Kiaru pretends to believe them, he leaves them to be devoured by their own pet in the pit. Following this, Kiaru secures a room and declares that all four of them will share it, but Eve protests, saying he should consider her, who is not comfortable listening to their plot jams. However, Kiaru states that he won't let her out of his sight since she is in danger. While wandering through the marketplace, Kiaru and Freya notice men frantically shouting that soldiers from the Imperial Kingdom have entered the city. Concerned, Kiaru instructs Freya to return to the inn without him. Climbing up a nearby tower, Kiaru spots the approaching soldiers and realizes that Norn, the most ruthless and cunning temptress in the kingdom, has arrived. However, he also notices Blade, the hero of Sword, who is also a target of his vendetta. However, his attention is drawn to another individual, Hawkeye, who seems to sense someone watching from the tower. Realizing he might be discovered, Kiaru quickly descends from the tower and makes his escape. Later, Kiaru is joined by his companions and the merchant he had been dealing with the previous day. Over a shared meal, which Kiaru praises, the merchant named Carmen agrees, calling it the finest food available. Carmen shares his aspiration to expand his business and open a larger shop in the city. In turn, Kiaru reveals that he is an alchemist and proposes a business arrangement, which Carmen gladly accepts. However, Carmen also warns Kiaru to be cautious of Blade, who is notorious for capturing and abusing women throughout the city. Kiaru begins to formulate a plan to lure Blade into a trap by using Freya as bait. But after considering the risks, particularly the chance that Norn might recognize Freya as Flare due to her obsession, he rethinks this approach. He briefly considers using Ii or Setsuna instead but decides against it. However, after hammering their cakes, he reasons that he won't want his toys to be violated. The following morning, Kiaru asks Freya to apply makeup on him, and then he transforms his body into that of a woman. Disguised, he ventures out with the goal of catching Blade's attention. On the way, he is ambushed by 3 men, but he whoops their asses. Kiaru proceeds to a bar that Blade is known to frequent during her predatory outings. After ordering a drink, Blade arrives and they begin to converse. Kiaru pretends to be friendly and Blade, thinking she has the upper hand, offers another drink, secretly drugging it. However, when Kiaru suggests that Blade drink it herself, she does so, then suddenly kisses him, transferring the drug liquid into his mouth. Kiaru collapses as a result. Blade carries the unconscious Kiaru back to her place, but on the way, she is confronted by a man seeking revenge for his daughter, one of Blade's victims. As the man charges at Blade, she throws Kiaru's body at him. To Blade's shock, Kiaru jumps in the air, kicking the man to the ground and declaring that the revenge is his. Surprised by Kiaru's resistance to the drug, Blade demands to know who he is, but Kiaru doesn't respond. The two engage in a fierce battle, with Kiaru wielding a sword gifted by Carmen. However, Blade's healing weapon makes her a formidable opponent, and she eventually overpowers Kiaru, seizing him by the neck. Expressing her admiration for strong women, Blade knocks Kiaru unconscious and drags him to her lair. She begins to make out with Kiaru. She puts her hand down there and finds a limping sausage, shocking her. She becomes disgusted as she reasons that she has been freaky with a man, all the while thinking it's a woman. Kiaru breaks his chains and stabs Blade with a poisoned knife, making her weak. However, she desperately reaches for her Ragnarok sword, which could heal her, but Kiaru prevents her from doing so, and he tells her he can finally begin his revenge. Kiaru uses his heal ability to learn from touching Blade that Norn is preparing a massive search and destroy operation within days. In response, Kiaru takes Blade to a dark room and brings out 3 hungry, feisty demons, telling her to entertain them or face being devoured. Blade pleads for mercy, asking him to forgive her, but Kiaru coldly reminds her of how she would not have shown him mercy if their roles were reversed. He offers her a chance. If she can satisfy the demons until sunrise, he will let her go. With no other choice, Blade submits immediately, and the 3 men start to clap her from all directions while Kiaru enjoys the show. To further torment her, he transforms his appearance to resemble Flare, causing Blade to feel utterly humiliated. Overwhelmed, Blade loses the will to continue, and the demons consume her, leading to her demise. Afterward, her weapon reverts to a crystal ball, which Kiaru gleefully takes with him as he walks away, laughing like a moron. The next day, Kiaru is at Carmen's shop, where they discuss their business dealings and express mutual appreciation for their partnership. Suddenly, Kiaru hears Hawkeye's voice behind him and is immediately on alert, realizing how formidable Hawkeye must be since he didn't sense him approaching. Hawkeye, having learned that Kiaru was the one who created the medicine, offers him a place in their ranks. However, Kiaru declines, stating his love for traveling. Hawkeye then questions Kiaru about why he was observing them from a tower. Kiaru explains that seeing a large number of kingdom soldiers enter the city warranted caution, and seeing that he has a point, Hawkeye agrees but warns him not to do anything suspicious. Back at their hideout, Kiaru activates the gem he got from Blade and transforms into a weapon that he plans to use against his enemies and to protect the world. Feeling excited, he quickly works out with Freya and Setsuna while Eve watches in silence, wishing Kiaru could destroy her gates like that. The next day, Norn addresses the public, claiming that demons are using humans as livestock and calls for their eradication to return the city to human control. 2 of her men, hidden in the crowd, incite a fake attack on her, making it appear as though the demons are plotting against her. She orders her soldiers to unalive every brainwashed human and demon. As the soldiers massacre the citizens, Carmen is also eliminated, which enrages Kiaru.
Big bad bug got a bit of a soft spot, huh?
In a fury, he begins slaughtering every kingdom soldier he encounters. And when Norn hears of a swordsman decimating her forces, she commands her elite soldiers to stop him. Meanwhile, Freya uses her magic to project an image of herself across the city, introducing herself as Flare delivers a speech only Martin Luther King gave in his lifetime, urging the soldiers to cease fighting and stop killing innocent humans and demons, emphasizing that none of them are brainwashed. She shares how she has witnessed the bonds of love between humans and demons in this city. Moved by her words, the soldiers drop their weapons, and Norn becomes furious, wondering why the heck Flare is doing that. Kiaru suddenly bursts into the room, only to be confronted by Hawkeye. Norn confidently asserts that Kiaru cannot defeat Hawkeye, but the battle between them ensues regardless, with Norn watching the action film. As the fight intensifies, Hawkeye notices the lethal nature of Kiaru's weapon, Ragnarok, and vows to avoid contact with it. He attempts to poison Kiaru using small weapons, but Kiaru uses Ragnarok's ability to heal himself, shocking Hawkeye. The battle rages on until Kiaru finally manages to unalive Hawkeye by dismembering him with his heal skill, leaving Norn in shock. Kiaru then strikes Norn in the stomach and takes Norn to an underground chamber, where he begins to torture her. Despite her pleas for mercy, he refuses to forgive her, citing the death of his close friend Carmen and her callous remarks about him. With a twisted idea in mind, Kiaru tells Norn that if she can resist being seduced by Flare, who is now in the form of a dog, without making any happy noise, he might consider releasing her in the morning. Flare begins to play with Norn in a naughty way, but Norn is unable to control herself and succumbs to the sensations, making Kiaru mock her for still feeling saws in such a state. As punishment, Kiaru erases her memories and alters her appearance, then introduces her to everyone as his long-lost sister, Ellen, claiming they have been reunited in this city. Meanwhile, the Imperial King summons Bullet to hunt down Kiaru. Bullet, determined to find him, looks at Kiaru's poster and goons to it. Will Kiaru's thirst for revenge ever be satisfied? If you have reached this far, let's confuse the fake fans by commenting "Rip Flare." Also, clap the like button if you love this recap, and subscribe to this channel for more legendary plot adventures.